Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Rucha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 2 Samuel, the 5th chapter. And as we left off in the 4th chapter, you had pretty much the servants of, I believe it was Ishbosheth, who ended up slaying him and bringing his head to David, thinking that they would get a reward for it. But instead, they ended up being slain for that. So, this is 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1. And it came to pass, then came all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spake, saying, Behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh, meaning we are your kinsfolk, right? Bone and being your bone and your flesh is another way of saying being like close. Also in time past, when Saul was king over us, thou wast he that leddest out and broughtest in Israel. So even during the time when Saul was king, you were really the one who was leading our people, right? The armies and so on and so forth. And the Lord Yahweh said to thee, Thou shalt feed my people Israel, and thou shalt be a captain over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king to Hebron, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And in Jerusalem he reigned 30 years over all Israel and Judah. And the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land. Because remember, prior to them actually taking over Jerusalem, it was known as Jebus, which was inhabited by the Jebusites. So here, David goes up to basically take it over, to fight against it. It says here, unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, Except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither. Thinking David cannot come in hither. Now, verse 6, it is a bit tricky in the Old English, but what they were saying here and was like mocking David and his men to as though they were weak, to say that even the lame and the blind would be enough to drive you away. And they said that because they thought that David couldn't, and his men couldn't break through to take over that city. For example, the NKJV has it, you shall not come in here, but the blind and the lame will repel you. All right, the NIV, you will not get in here. Even the blind and the lame can ward you off. They thought David cannot get in there. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold for Zion. The same is the city of David. So in the end, he ended up conquering it. And basically it became known as the city of David. And David said on that day, Whosoever getteth up to the gutter and smiteth the Jebusites. Now the gutter here is like the conduit, right? The water conduit, or the passage by which the water flows, which would be like a way to get through into the city. So David was basically saying, whoever is able to make it through and smite those Jebusites, the lame and the blind, right? Because that's how he was like returning that mockery upon them, right? Because that's what they said, that even the lame and the blind of our people can ward you off. So he's saying, okay, so these go in there and smite these so-called lame and blind that supposedly can ward us off, that are hated of David's soul, because they reproached him that day. So he he didn't like that very much. He shall be chief and captain. Wherefore they said, the blind and the lame shall not come into the house. Now this latter part here is saying that afterwards, after that date, it became a saying, right? Basically, don't make sure you don't bring the blind and the lame into the house or into the palace. And the uh, the meaning of that saying is more so like due to the reproach that happened that day, and how much it angered David. You better make sure you don't bring the blind and the lame into his palace, okay, lest you remind him of that reproachful day and anger him. Now, it was a saying, right? But it wasn't necessarily literal in the sense, right? It's not like David was immediately angry whenever he saw somebody that was blind or lame, because as we'll continue on to read, he ends up taking in was it Mephibosheth, which was the son of Jonathan, and he was lame, right? Verse 9. So David dwelt in the fort, or in the fortress, and called it the city of David. That was Jebus, which later came to be known as Jerusalem. And David built round about from Milo and inward. And David went on and grew great, and the Lord Yahweh God of hosts was with him. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees, and carpenters, and masons, and they built David an house. So they built him a nice palace over there. And David perceived that the Lord Yahweh had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake. So basically, like one day he was just like, it dawned upon him, you could say, right, that damn, like the Lord has actually made me king. Like I'm really, king over all Israel here, you know. And David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem after he was come from Hebron, and there were yet sons and daughters born to David. And these be the names of those that were born unto him in Jerusalem: Shammua, and Shobab, and Nathan, and Solomon, Ibhar also, and Elishua, and Nepheg, and Japhia, and Elishama, and Eliada, and Eliphalet. But when the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel, all the Philistines came up to seek David. Now, this wasn't in the good sense, right? They came looking for him to basically fight against him. And David heard of it and went down to the stronghold, that is. The Philistines also came and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord Yahweh, saying, Shall I go up to the Philistines? Wilt thou deliver them into mine hands, or should I go to war with them? Are we going to be successful? Are you going to give us the victory? And the Lord said unto David, Go up, for I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into thine hand. So yeah, go ahead. They're all yours. Where we at? And David came to Baal Perazim, and David smote them there, and said, The Lord Yahweh hath broken forth upon mine enemies before me, as the breaches of waters. Therefore he called the name of that place Baal Perazim. And when you break that name down, Baal in the Hebrew Baal is another name for Lord. And Perez or Perazim here goes into a breach or a division. So you have the two words Baal and Paratiza. Yeah, Lord of the breaks, right? So Baal Paratizayim, and that root word is Paratiza, which is a breach or a gap. Hence the name Lord of the breaks, or the breach, or the breaches. And they left their images, meaning the Philistines, after they were smitten, abandoned their idols, and David and his men burned them. And the Philistines came up yet again and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. So another time they came up after they had fled, they recovered, they regrouped, amassed another army, and decided to come against Israel again. And when David inquired of the Lord, he said, Thou shalt not go up, but fetch a compass behind them, meaning don't go head on with them. this time flank them. So go around them and then make your attack from behind them and come upon them over against the mulberry trees. So that was based on that valley of Rephaim, the area where the mulberry trees were, is where the Lord was saying when you go around them, that basically station yourself over there. And let it be, when thou hearest the sound of a going in the tops of the mulberry trees, then thou shalt bestir thyself, for then shall the Lord Yahweh go out before thee to smite the host of the Philistines. So that was his signal, right? And when you hear the sound, and the word of going is like marching. So basically, when you hear marching above on those trees at the top, bestir meaning make yourself ready and alert, because that's your signal to basically go and attack. That the Lord is basically is smiting them before you. And so now this could have been, the Lord could have had, the angels, right, via like chariots or something to make that sound. Is definitely not far-fetched, considering that in the book of Maccabees, I believe it's 2nd Maccabees, the 5th chapter, if my memory serves me right. But you had, they saw the apparitions in the heavens for 40 days or so. And it was basically, as they said, like angels, like basically having like war games, right? Jousting and going one against another in the heavens. So in any case, this was David's signal. And once he heard it, verse 25, and David did so as the Lord Yahweh had commanded him, and smote the Philistines from Gibeah until thou cometh unto Gazer. And that brings us to the end of 2 Samuel, the 5th chapter. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachah Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.